Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. Taming the National Security Agency. This now appears to be the intention of the U.S. president. But how likely is this? It has taken months of scandal and embarrassing lies to get Obama and his administration to this point. What is clear is the following. Either Obama is unaware of the extent of NSA surveillance, or he remains untruthful with the American people and the world. In the end, it's all about trust. To crosstalk the NSA scandal, I'm joined by my guest in Washington, Karen Hudes. She is a former senior counselor at the World Bank and a whistleblower. And we cross to Daniel McAdams. He is the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute. All right, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want. Daniel, if I can go to you first. I mean, Obama says he wants reform of the intelligence agencies, but we still don't know what he knew and when he knew it. And I always get nervous when a politician says, that's classified. So what does his words mean about reform? Or does he just want this thing to go away? And I'd like to point out to our viewers is that as Congress sits down and talks about this, we're probably going to get some more scandal, more stories, and more lies. So, I mean, this seems like a fool's errand.
Well, you're right, Peter. And you know what Jay Carney, the president's spokesman, said is the president knew nothing about it. However, the NSA is doing a great job what they're doing anyway. So it really does raise some very troubling issues. You know, does the president have control over the NSA? Does he know? I mean, even more seriously, was this an operation approved under President George W. Bush that's gone on and they've not bothered to inform the president? It's very disturbing. And as you rightly pointed out, this morning, apparently, Congress will be dropping at least one bill. Congressman Sensenbrenner who was an author of the original Patriot Act, is now going to drop a bill called the USA Freedom Act. So we need the Freedom Act to free us from his previous Patriot Act. But I'm sure we'll talk about this later. The Freedom Act is not much better than the original.
Okay. Karen, how do you see this playing out? Because it's very interesting. I see people in Congress scrambling about this. Dianne Feinstein is all over the place. It's really almost surreal. I mean, she, on the one hand, says she's really against the surveillance of foreign leaders, but on the other hand, she wants to codify and put into law a lot of these illegal practices. I mean, this is schizophrenia when it comes to the national security state.
I think this is a matter of survival of the United States because we are about to lose our allies, and a very accurate analysis coming out of the Defense Department shows that we are about to lose Germany as an ally. This is a matter of national security. Whatever the people think that they're doing on behalf of the American people, they absolutely are not. When you look at what American opinion is, 75% of the American people want to work together with our allies. They don't want to be a go-it-alone nation in foreign affairs. This is absolutely abysmal. And what you have to fault is the American press, because they are not telling the American public what's going on. And specifically, we are being run from the outside by a group of foreign companies that have taken over the capital markets. A very accurate a very accurate analysis by mathematicians at the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland, has absolutely shown up that there is a cabal of bankers that own the capital markets. They've grabbed power, and the United States, unfortunately, is a country that has been captured by this group of private entities. They own the Federal Reserve System, and they are dragging this country into the ground, and they are the ones who are spying on on our allies.
Well, there's certainly a lot of spying going on there. Daniel, I mean, the thing is that I can't seem to understand is why should the United States spy on its allies like this? Listening on the telephone conversations of Angela Merkel, I mean, just to what extent did they think they're going to get information to protect the national security of the United States? I mean, do people have suspicions about Angela Merkel and her motives and her politics? I mean, this is so extreme, and it makes me want to believe that it has nothing to do with national security at all. All it is to have the advantage over others at all times on all things.
Well, the thing is, Peter, a lot of this spying was done in cooperation with our allies as well. Certainly, the French and the English and the UK participated in our monitoring of their own citizens. I think it only became a huge issue when it became embarrassing. When we found out that the NSA had gone beyond what they had originally agreed to do, they do have plenty of intelligence sharing agreements with these countries, so that it's known that they're spying on the individuals. And it's the same with Dianne Feinstein. It was only a problem. It's not a problem for her that they're spying on Americans. She's absolutely fine with that. It only became a problem when it found out that they were spying on the fellow elites in Europe. So that's where it became a problem. As to the question of what they tell us it's doing, they say, well, it's keeping us safe from Al-Qaeda. But that's kind of a laugh, too, isn't it? Because why on earth is the U.S. supporting Al-Qaeda in places like Syria? Why did the U.S. intervene in Libya, and now Al-Qaeda is on top, or an affiliate of Al-Qaeda is on top? And now, of all places, look in Iraq. Hundreds of people are killed a week by an Al-Qaeda that did not exist before the U.S. intervened. So how, on one hand, can they tell us they have to spy on all of us to defeat Al-Qaeda, and on the other hand, they're doing their darn best to support Al-Qaeda throughout the region?
You know, Karen, you know, if we go back to Feinstein, I think it's really quite interesting is that she was a great protector, is a great protector of the national security state, and she wants all of these reforms and oversight. But wasn't that her job in the first place in the Senate? Having the position that she does and looking at watching surveillance and intelligence, and now she says she wants reform? I don't understand that.
Peter, she's not leveling with people. What I told her specifically was when the president of the World Bank was being fired by the board of executive directors, Paul Wolfowitz, because he had given an exorbitant pay raise to his girlfriend, Shaha Riza. I found out, because I speak Dutch and I happen to be in Holland, I found out from the representative of the Dutch government on the board that the executive directors were being blackmailed to prevent them from firing Paul Wolfowitz. And I came back and I went to the Treasury Department, Kenneth Peel, and I told him what was going on, and I told him that we were going to lose NATO over this, that it was not in the United States' national interest to prevent Paul Wolfowitz from being fired for giving 30% pay raise to his girlfriend. So, no. And Dianne Feinstein knows this specifically. I went to her when, you know, she's on the Senate Committee on Select Intelligence, and she's supposed to have oversight, and she has fallen down on the job. The United States Congress, it has been bought up. They're not representing American citizens' interests. They're lining their own pockets.
You know, Daniel, I mean, what is this all about? Because on the one hand, I mean, if I can make a binary here, we need intelligence to keep ourselves safe, but maybe we need intelligence to keep the NSA in business. It's a matter of survival for the intelligence community itself. I mean, they've divorced themselves from the mission. It is just to continue the expansion of their empire and prove that they need to exist.
Well, you know, they get at the very least some $80 billion a year. Much of their budget is not, you're not capable of scrutinizing it. And I worked in the U.S. House for 11 years. We were never allowed to look at the appropriations for the intelligence community. It was all classified. So we had no idea what was being appropriated. Only certain members under certain conditions could actually see what was happening. So you have a behemoth that's gotten out of control. And quite frankly, I feel sorry for the president if he does try to rein them in, because it could very well be dangerous.
Karen, what is the process of reform here? Because if we have the oversight, who oversees the overseers? Feinstein is a perfect example of it. It was her job to do this, and now she's saying that, you know, we need a complete revamp. I mean, then who's going to lead that process? Because it looks to me that Congress has really failed in its mission and it's failed the American people when it comes to intelligence and security.
Peter, what we have is a breakdown of the rule of law in the United States on a very fundamental level. There's a Constitution which provides that the government is going to be governing the people on the consent of the governed, and there's something called Article 5, which provides that when the state legislatures have asked for a constitutional convention, the Congress shall convene a constitutional convention. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. And in 1929, 35 states state legislatures had asked for a constitutional convention, and the U.S. Congress refused to give the American people one. By now, we're now up to 49 of 50 state legislatures that have called for a constitutional convention. And there is absolutely no excuse for the U.S. Congress not to convene a constitutional convention. The American people hold them in contempt.
Okay, Daniel, I mean, they certainly should hold them in contempt when it comes to security, because all I ever hear is Al-Qaeda, 9/11, and a few other words, and then, just don't ask questions because, don't worry, we're taking care of it. Just trust me.
Well, look, John Inglis, who's the deputy NSA director, was before the Senate Judiciary Committee earlier this summer. And as you remember, we were told that the spying was necessary, and it's captured dozens of terrorist plots. It's disrupted some 50 terrorist plots. Well, what Mr. Inglis said before the Senate Judiciary Committee earlier this year is that, quote, at most one terrorist plot was disrupted by the bulk collection of maybe one. Yeah, maybe one was intercepted. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, they throw everything into the box and say, we've stopped this, we've stopped that, and the other. But when it comes down to it, there's very little to show for this.
Would you agree with that, Karen? I mean, because again, it's the NSA for NSA's sake, it sounds like to me.
What is going on, I'll repeat it once more, is that the United States is being run by remote control by a group of corrupt companies. And these companies want the NSA to find out secrets, trade secrets, from all the companies in the world. This is what they're doing. This is unacceptable. The American people deserve a better government than this.
Okay, on that point, we're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on the National Security Agency. Stay with our team. Okay, Daniel, if I can go back to you, as you pointed out, President Obama's spokesperson said the NSA is doing an extraordinary job, good job, guys, 10 out of 10, et cetera, though there's a lot of no comment, and that's classified, okay? But what is the NSA and other organizations like it looking for, looking at millions and millions of telephone conversations, all this data out there? I mean, is everybody a suspect? What are they looking for? Or are they just saving it for a rainy day to use at a different time?
Well, it is almost sort of a department of pre-crime, isn't it? They are recording these things, and if some point in the future, things that you've said 10 years ago can be used against you, that certainly is the case. But the other issue is simply how possibly can they process the enormous amount of information that they're hoovering up and find anything useful in it. So you have such over-collection that you're going to miss what actual threats there are out there, and there certainly are some. How to address those more effectively is a different discussion, but certainly when you put everything in the pot, how possibly can they find what they're looking for? They said, to find the needle, you have to have the whole haystack. Well, that makes sense.
Well, what they're doing is they're making the haystack much, much bigger. Karen, you brought up the industrial espionage element here, and I think that's not getting nearly enough coverage in the media, because we have, the Department of Defense says they do not spy. There's no industrial espionage done on their part by the U.S. government, but it's obviously that they have been in a number of cases in Europe and in South America. Now, this makes sense to me, considering what you said earlier, is because you give information to your rivals, or when you sit down at negotiations, you know what the other side is going to talk about. This is very, very damaging when we look at the new trade relationship the United States is building with Europe. And of course, South America has just another reason more to hate the United States.
This is absolutely not in the United States' security interest. We need allies, and we're alienating them. For example, on September 9th, a military helicopter buzzed the U.S. consulate in Frankfurt and broke all the Chinaware in the consulate. And when the government, a spokesperson for the government who didn't want to be identified, said this was a shot across the bow. How many more hints do we need than a military helicopter buzzing our consulate? And Germany has said that they're not going to share intelligence information with the United States anymore. We are losing our allies that we absolutely need for our national security. This is not a go-it-alone country. And so whatever the NSA thinks that they're doing on our behalf, they're betraying us because they're making us lose our allies. This is very clear. And I actually warned Secretary Hagel
Daniel,